Claims complete vindication after a new report clears him of wrongdoing in the naming of his friend to be the province's top cop. The Integrity Commissioner's report said Ford didn't break any rules in appointing Ron Taverner to be the OPP Commissioner, but the report did say the hiring process was flawed. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley joins us now with more on this. So, Mike, what exactly are the findings?
Dwight, this is a very specific ruling from the Integrity Commissioner, and it says that Premier Doug Ford did not breach what's called the Members' Integrity Act. The investigation, 100 pages here, it finds no evidence that Premier Ford was in a conflict of interest when his longtime friend Ron Taverner was named to lead the Ontario Provincial Police. But still, there are some harsh words in here for the Ford government, and there's a suggestion that Doug Ford's chief of staff was knee-deep in this hiring process. So let's take a look from what the Integrity Commissioner says. It says that there were some troubling aspects to the hiring process that may have led to a preference being given to one candidate. So what are these troubling aspects the Integrity Commissioner is talking about? Well, there's evidence that the province's top civil servant, Cabinet Secretary Steve Orsini, felt pressure to hire Taverner. The most disconcerting thing for the Integrity Commissioner, there were text messages between Orsini and Ford's Chief of Staff, Dean French, about Ron Taverner during the whole hiring process. And the Integrity Commissioner said anyone seeing those text messages would have serious doubts that the process was fair. Dwight?
Okay. Reaction to this now, Mike?
Well, Premier Doug Ford is setting aside all of those aspects of the report that I just spoke about, and he's focusing on that specific finding that he did not breach the ethics rules. Although he calls the report a total vindication, he's also insisting that the government followed the law.
I wasn't involved in it. It was very clear. And maybe if we went back to the old process, maybe I should have been involved, but I stayed. And it was very clear in his report that I stayed out of it. And I kept saying I stayed out of it. And it's proven now.
Now, it was the NDP who laid the complaint that led to this Integrity Commissioner ruling, and they're saying that this report reveals there was a campaign by Ford's inner circle to get Taverner into that job.
This raises more questions than any answers that Doug Ford just gave in his press conference or in the House. It looks like a coordinated effort to do everything that they could to push forward Mr. Taverner in through this appointment. We don't know at this point whether Doug Ford was doing Dean French's dirty work or Dean French was doing Doug Ford's dirty work.
And yet
that's how intertwined they are at this level.
All right, Mike, we've also learned new details about another job Taverner was offered at the Ontario Cannabis Store.
Yes, and Dwight, some of this evidence comes from the Premier himself. He testified that back in August, he approached Ron Taverner about working for the Ontario Cannabis Store. And in fact, he suggested the job title, President of Community Outreach. So what happened was one day in August, Ford's Chief of Staff, Dean French, called up Secretary of Cabinet, the top civil servant in the province, and said, I want a written offer of a job to Ron Taverner by noon today. And so what follows is a flurry of emails between the Premier's office and all these high-level civil servants. And there ends up being a yellow sticky note that comes out of the Premier's office that has $270,000 a year written down on it, the salary that was to be offered to Ron Taverner. Ron Taverner initially accepted the job, but in early September, he turned it down, saying he got cold feet. Well, early September is exactly the time when the OPP commissioner, the previous OPP commissioner, told the province that he was going to retire. Dwight?
Interesting. Thank you for that, Mike. If you want to read the Integrity Commissioner's full report for yourself, we have the 102-page document online. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto. He's not facing any charges, and he says he did nothing wrong. The father, who was arrested after police issued that Amber Alert for his 5-year-old daughter, is speaking out tonight, but police maintain they had reason to believe the child was in danger. Farah Morelli joins us live with more on this. And Farah, two very different stories about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, Dwight, and two messages that are hard to square. It's difficult to say exactly what happened without knowing what evidence police were looking at here. The father, who was separated from the mother, said that he was just picking up his daughter, but police are saying that they did believe there was a credible threat to this child's safety. The one thing we do know is that it was this Amber Alert that ultimately led police to this father and daughter. This was the dramatic scene outside a Markham locksmith yesterday. Police, with guns drawn, storming inside.
I was so scared, no. So many people came in, just like you guys came in, and I was nervous.
Officers were looking for this man, Solomon Joffrey. Today we caught up with him in Windsor in a less dramatic scene. Yesterday, he was the suspect in an Amber Alert after his wife reported their 5-year-old missing.
There was no legal documentation saying that I couldn't be with my daughter.
Joffrey says he was just picking up his daughter from school for lunch. He was interrogated, then released without charges.
There was concern for the child's safety right out of the gate.
Police couldn't say today just what that concern was, only that it was credible, and it rarely moves to issue an Amber Alert.
We also deal with plenty of domestic situations where there's custody issues, where people call and have concerns for a child. They don't escalate to that Amber Alert level. So, I can tell you there was a definite concern yesterday for that child's safety, and we engaged all resources.
The OPP is responsible for issuing all Amber Alerts in Ontario. It only does so if 3 criteria are met. The first is that a law enforcement agency believes a child under 13 has been abducted. The second, that the agency believes the child is in danger. And finally, there has to be a description of the child, the abductor, or a vehicle. Once the OPP has determined these 3 criteria are met, the Amber Alert is issued immediately. York Regional Police contacted the OPP at 4:15 yesterday. That was about an hour before the alert went out.
We were advised that a child had been abducted earlier on before the Amber Alert was activated. And we get advised of that, and then the checks and balances need to be met. Within an hour after the alert was issued, police were able to find Joffrey and his daughter, thanks to someone who saw the Amber Alert. But just like the last time an alert was issued, police got a barrage of complaints from the public about being interrupted on their phones and TVs. We did get complaints, some 911 complaints, not to the volume that we did the last time, but people still feel compelled to call 911 to complain. And this time was.
And Dwight, one of the things we heard from a lot of people as well yesterday was that they continued to get these alerts even after it was canceled. And today the OPP told me that they did actually miss a step in the process of canceling the alert, which might explain why people continued to get this alert on their TVs and phones after this child was found. As for the case of Joffrey and his daughter, the York Regional Police tell me there is no further investigation on that.
Thank you, Farah.
Some first-time home buyers could get some help paying for part of their mortgage, but there's a cap on that federal program. So what can a mortgage of less than $480,000 really get you in Toronto? I'll have that story coming up.
College and university students here in Toronto walked out of class this afternoon as part of a province-wide protest to the government's changes to post-secondary funding. Linda Ward was at the rally.
Yeah, so a couple of hundred people here outside of the University of Toronto's downtown campus. We'll show you the size of this crowd here, a bit of a rally going on. This is part of a province-wide walkout. Students from 17 colleges and universities across Ontario walked out of class today, and they're here to protest the Ford government cuts to tuition and education funding in Ontario. Now, this sort of goes back about 2 years. Kathleen Wynne's Liberal government promised free tuition for students, university students, low income in the province of Ontario. Well, the Ford government has announced that they're going to do away with that. They're going to eliminate that free tuition. Instead of giving those grants that would pay for that tuition, they're now going to give some of that in the form of loans. So students here very, very upset about that. They've also raised or perhaps lowered the bar for families to qualify for funding in the province. So you used to be able to qualify if a family made about $175,000 a year. Well, now that's $140,000 a year. So that eliminates a lot of the students that are here at this rally today. This also affects faculty here at the universities and colleges because the cuts to tuition fees, that 10% cut to tuition fees, is not going to be met by an equivalent sort of grant or anything to funding to universities. What is it that that you guys are willing to do in order to kind of make change here? I know this is the third rally, but it doesn't seem like the government is prepared to do anything.
Yeah, I think that what we're really seeing right now is a solidarity building between the student movement and through labor unions on campus, as well as off campus, because really like there are cuts to the public services that are happening like almost every day, it seems. And so really it's starting to create this feeling of like, okay, maybe it's you today, but it's us tomorrow.
I don't think it's worth sacrificing what will be sacrificed because of that reduction. Like, I would rather pay a little bit more to make sure that everybody can access the same programs, all the staff can be paid equally and fairly. I think that's more important than what the 10% will be for me.
This week I had marathon office hours. I had to expand my hours 2 to 3 times what it might normally be, and it's just to hear students out about their difficulty dealing with some of the tragedies on campus, and I think that those worries and fears compound the stress of exams and things like that. I don't think it's a problem that's getting better without assistance from the university and the administration.
Students still have not managed to be able to overturn these funding cuts through this current progressive conservative government here in Ontario. Just one more thing for them to be thinking about as they head towards the end of the school year and that very stressful exam season.
Education Minister Lisa Thompson says her government's plan to increase class sizes in the province will actually benefit students in the real world. Here's what she had to say on the subject on Metro Morning earlier today.
How will larger class sizes help students?
Okay, so one thing that we've come to realize is that when students are currently preparing to go off to post-secondary education, we're hearing from professors and employers alike that they're lacking coping skills and they're lacking resiliency. We heard that loud and clear at an Ontario Chamber of Commerce consultation that we had. And so by increasing class sizes in high school, we're preparing them for the reality of post-secondary as well as the world of work.
So just to be clear, you believe that having more students in the classroom will prepare them better for life after high school?
Mm-hmm. And actually, in speaking to some teachers as well, when it comes to the group work and the teamwork that they want to facilitate in their classrooms, that ideal number is between 26 and 28. This one teacher spoke to me specifically about when they're facilitating that team approach, that group approach. She enabled her students to mentor and coach the rest of their team in their group environment.
So it'd be put on the students then to help other students?
Oh no, not at all. As I said, you know what? Let's look at it this way. Many parents have invested in tutors over the last decade and a half to help their students manage through the ideology and experimental learning that the Liberals introduced, be it math or be it other curriculum areas. And the fact of the matter is, every student deserves the best education, and whether they're working with a peer helper or with the very best teacher in front of the classroom, I think we're on track to making sure that we finally get education back on track.
And that conversation was brought up during question period at Queen's Park today. Take a listen.
This morning, the minister on CBC radio was asked how taking teachers out of classrooms would help students. She said she was doing this to build resiliency. I guess that's a tough love approach. But anyways, does the minister actually believe that she is doing students a favor by taking away their teachers?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And to start off, I have to say, I think somebody needs 2 minutes for fake laughing, because really and truly, this is ridiculous. The narrative the opposition party is trying to create is absolutely ridiculous. Let me tell you, Speaker, that we're investing in education, and I feel good about the plan that's going to work for you, your kids, your grandchildren, our teachers, our students, our employers, everyone in Ontario.
Spring as of 5:58 today, the season of new beginnings has begun, and it kind of feels like it out there. So, Colette, oh, look at that. You've got the flowers.
Oh, okay,
we're ready to go. It's spring.
Yeah, I'm not the only one who's ready to go. I was out there today, met some people, and of course, I had to go to a dog park to meet some people out there today, Dwight, and got to chat with them about what they're most excited about when it comes to spring. It's been a bit of a long winter. Can I ask you what you're most looking forward to about spring?
The warm weather.
I usually try to embrace the winter, but
How's that work for you?
it's not been great lately. I'm ready for spring.
What are you most looking forward to about spring?
Being able to walk outside without carrying 5 layers of jackets. Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get hit with in the next 2 months. But I don't know, it's going to be great to finally get out in the sun.
Patio season for sure.
I like how you're thinking. How long do you think it takes? Like, we're just the beginning spring until you're ready for the patio.
Spring is a clever month. It usually creeps up and then it retreats. So I think it's another 2 months before we can have consistent patio weather.
Summer, getting out with the dog, not being so cold, going up north, all those things.
Lots of things to look forward to, right?
Absolutely.
The thing about spring, as much as we welcome it, it is a transitional season when it comes to the weather. So we need a bit of gear. Layers, always a good idea, so you can wear more in the morning and peel them off into the afternoon. Sunglasses, hopefully we'll be needing these quite a bit. And it does happen to be a pretty rainy season. So umbrellas, good to have around. And another thing I always recommend are rubber boots for all of the melt and the rain. And I even put them, even if it's a struggle, on my doggie. It can be a bit of a struggle getting those boots on her, but boy, you saw the puddle there. That's what we also have to look forward to in spring, and spring showers. We have some of those on the way, and I'm going to explain those in the forecast here in a moment, but I want to just give you a little bit of information on what does it really mean. Well, we can call it the vernal equinox, we can call it as well spring equinox, March equinox, it doesn't matter what name. Essentially, that is Latin for equal night. And so we're supposed to be seeing as much daylight as we have nighttime, but I will tell you, it's close to it, but actually for Toronto, because of our latitude, also because of the refraction of some of the sun's rays in the atmosphere, it was back on the 17th where we were closer to having equal day and night. But close enough for us. The sun is over the equator and we have made it. So we'll talk about what's happening with the temperatures. Of course, today, mild. It was a nice way to bring spring in. It's still 8 degrees out there. We were up to unofficially 9.5. These are the spring showers that are moving in, but there's going to be some mixed precipitation in here as well. You can see it's a pretty wide system. Not a lot of moisture associated with this one, but there is some here, enough that we're going to see those showers pushing through later on this evening, say around 8 o'clock in that kind of neighborhood. Showers moving through, mixed precipitation to the north, getting a little spotty at times, but still a little bit of wet weather into tomorrow morning's commute is possible. And on the backside, even some wet flurries possible through the city as the temperature falls tonight down close to freezing. It won't be under it. Then the clouds are going to hang in there tomorrow until we get into the afternoon hours. Some sunny breaks possible. 2 degrees then overnight with that rain changing to a mix. Could be a little patchy fog, so some reduced visibility. 6 degrees, not quite as mild tomorrow. And Dwight, we have a much cooler day coming on Friday. That gal who said that spring is a clever month, I think that's a very good way to phrase it.
It really was. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
We are taking a closer look today at the federal government's plan to help first-time home buyers. It was announced in the budget yesterday. Magda Garba-Selassie joins us live now with more on this. And Magda, Toronto's red-hot market is yet again a disadvantage for buyers.
It could be if you're hoping to cash in on the government's shared mortgage equity plan. Now, remember, Canada's Mortgage and Housing Corporation will pay up to 10% of the cost of a new home for those eligible. But here's the thing with this plan. With the CMHC loan and the rest of the mortgage, there's a cap of $480,000 for the mortgage. So what could you really buy here in Toronto?
Are there many places in Toronto for less than $480,000?
We don't get too many these days in Toronto at all at that price point.
We're going to look at one, though.
We are going to look at one.
So this is a one-bedroom?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Shall we start in the kitchen living room area?
So this condo near Park Lawn and the Gardner is listed at $399,000. Online, you can find a few listings around that price. But this realtor says these prices are most likely a starting point for multiple offers. So how much good can the government's plan do with a cap of $480,000?
The cap is a little tight for the Toronto market, considering the price points that are fairly high, and it's a bit more fair in other parts of the country, obviously.
under 400,000.
But the new program could help this Mississauga couple.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Help us a lot.
They've been searching for a home for more than 2 years, while paying rent in the meantime. Some family have agreed to help them financially.
Gotta wait, gotta save, gotta look elsewhere. Clearly we can't look within the GTA. So.
And then when we actually had something, we actually had the money ready to go, then the bidding wars were happening. And we were like, okay, great. Now we definitely can't get a home.
They're now searching for homes in Hamilton, Waterloo, and Niagara. Now that it's possible the federal government could also pitch in, their dream of owning a home is still alive. Now, the government estimates that its first-time buyer plan could help up to 100,000 people buy their first homes across the country over the next 3 years. But how many of them will actually be purchasing property here in Toronto? Well, that's hard to say, Dwight.
Thank you, Magda.
You're welcome.
The mayor is vowing to make Toronto streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists. I'm Greg Ross. Coming up, we'll have details on some of the changes that Mayor Tory is proposing as part of the city's Vision Zero plan.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
2 years into a plan to make the streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists, the mayor says he wants to take Vision Zero to the next level. Greg Ross is live on Lakeshore West with the details. So, Greg, what does our mayor want to see happen?
Well, he has a problem with the fact that we continue to see a number of pedestrian deaths on Toronto streets year after year. Already this year, we've seen 9 on Toronto streets, and we haven't even hit the summer months where there are a lot of people that get outdoors and onto the streets. Tory is suggesting a number of changes that he believes will make Toronto streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists. He says he's asking city staff to look into lowering speed limits on arterial roads around the city, creating more mid-block crosswalks, installing more red light cameras, putting in photo radar systems to catch speeding drivers. Now, in 2018, we saw 41 pedestrian deaths in all on Toronto streets. Today, Mayor John Tory pointed to Scarborough. Now, that's an area where they've seen a lot of problems. 16 pedestrian deaths in 2018. Tory says he took a hard look at the issues that Scarborough is facing in particular to see what would lead to such a high number of pedestrian fatalities, and he found a number of issues.
Scarborough has the most arterial roads in the city. Arterial roads being defined as roads with 4 or more lanes of traffic and a speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour or higher. Scarborough also has the longest walking distance between protected, safe crossings compared to the rest of the city. So, for example, pedestrians have to walk on average 6 additional minutes to use a safe crossing, a crosswalk or a signalized intersection, compared to residents of Toronto and East York.
Now, Tory says that 6-minute walk can be a real burden, particularly for seniors and students. And often we see people that will try to cut across busy streets mid-block, and he says that's one of the big problems. So he's hoping by creating more crosswalks and by lowering speed limits that will help alleviate some of that problem. As for the red light cameras that he talked about and the photo radar, those are things that he's going to have to get approval from the province for. Now, Tory says he's going to push the province on that issue, particularly around school zones. In fact, he would like to see more automated speed enforcement in school zones by the start of next school year, Dwight.
Thank you, Greg. And we have an update to a story we brought you last week. The City of Vaughan has rejected the expansion and privatization plan for the Vaughan Sports Village. The plan was initially proposed by the operator of the recreation facility, the Montana Group. The expansion would mean the nearby public green space would become private, something that made the community uneasy. People who live around the complex expressed their concerns to the city, saying the parkland around their homes was something the city needed to protect. It covered prescription drugs for people under 25, but in less than 2 weeks, changes to OHIP Plus will take effect. What those changes are, coming up next. It was one of the Ford government's first announcements after taking power. In less than 2 weeks, changes to OHIP Plus will take effect, meaning taxpayer-funded prescriptions for people under 25 will end if you have private insurance. Lisa Shing takes us through the changes now.
Got to Grandma's and Grandpa's house. Andrew wanted to go out to play.
Joanne Witt's 2-year-old son has a complicated congenital heart defect. It requires various forms of treatment, including medication.
You want to play with your stackers?
For the last year under OHIP Plus, some of that medication was directly covered by the government. Soon she'll have to pay first, then get reimbursed.
There are a few more hoops to jump through.
Come April 1st, changes to the OHIP Plus pharmacare program will kick in.
I think that makes the best use of resources.
It's a rollback of what the Liberals put in place about a year ago. Many prescription drugs would be free for people under 25. Now, children and young adults will still be covered if they don't have private insurance. If they do, coverage for the more than 4,400 eligible medications will revert back to those plans. That means parents may have to pay out of pocket if maximum limits have been reached or if the plan does not cover a particular drug. Today, Ontario's health minister says most parents will be covered.
They are already receiving, in most cases, virtually all of the cost. I think that there would be very few situations where they wouldn't be.
Witt is hopeful the money the government saves, about $250 million a year, will go towards covering more expensive medications or therapy for children.
There's a better way potentially to spend the money that could be saved when when OHIP is not paying for medications that could be covered by private insurance.
So how will the new rules be enforced? That will fall to Ontario's pharmacists. They'll ask customers if they have insurance and check their coverage. How are you going to know for sure if someone is lying or not?
We're not going to know for sure. So if patients are dishonest, we do our due diligence and we check if they have a private plan. But to police every person that comes in is a little bit difficult.
The province says it's going to be issuing guidelines on specific questions to ask in the coming weeks. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The president of the University of Toronto says the community needs to work together in order to help students with mental health issues.
The kind of response that we need to put in place has to be a community response. The university needs to be working with healthcare providers in the community, with government partners, with student groups and others to put together a comprehensive response to this big challenge.
This comes after a difficult few days for students at the university. Over the weekend, a student died by suicide on campus, which led to a protest outside the president's office, with students calling on the school to do more when it comes to mental health. The students were also angry that the administration had failed to acknowledge the suicide or other suicides that happened earlier in the school year. The president says the school is working with different student groups on a better plan to help them. Serving coffee and a cause, how this cafe serves up opportunities for people living with mental illness. Still ahead.
It's just a given that we all have at some point went through something, and we all support each other. We're a team here.
Canada's finance minister taking to the airwaves today, trying to sell his new budget.
We want to continue to make sure that we're fiscally responsible as we make investments in Canadians. My view is that we need to protect a huge strength that we have in terms of our strong balance sheet.
Bill Morneau says Canada has a record low unemployment rate, adding the government is trying to help ease concerns about housing. But Bill Morneau is getting upstaged again thanks to the latest turn in a tussle between an Ontario Liberal backbencher and our Prime Minister. Selina Cesar-Chavin has quit caucus to sit as an independent, and as Katie Simpson explains, it's not the only distraction dogging Trudeau.
The only thing the Prime Minister wants to talk about today is his new budget. But his agenda has been thrown right off track after an Ontario Liberal MP announced she's quitting the party. Selina Cesar-Chavin didn't offer any hints about her decision when she went into caucus this morning.
I'm going, so yeah.
Okay,
How are you feeling? I'm good.
Hours later, the Prime Minister announced she's leaving his team.
I have just been notified by my office that Selina Caesar-Chavannes has decided to sit as an independent. I want to thank her for her service to the Liberal Party and to her constituents, and wish her the best in her continued service to constituents.
Caesar-Chavannes accused the Prime Minister of being hostile and angry with her when she told him last month that she didn't want to run again in the 2019 election. She went public after throwing her support behind Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott in their criticism of the government over the handling of the SNC-Lavalin affair.
I understand that there's a lot of people that supported me that were disappointed in, what I did, doing the interview that I did.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The opposition used question period to announce its plans to push for a new investigation into the controversy through the Ethics Committee. The Liberals hold the majority on that committee, so the effort may not get very far. That might be good enough for the Conservatives, who are doing everything they can to try to keep this story alive. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
We caught up exclusively with Selina Caesar-Chavannes. Here's more of what she has to say and her message to her Whitby constituents.
I understand that there's a lot of people that supported me that were disappointed in, what I did, doing the interview that I did, and I think that it's important to understand that, while I support the values and the principles of the Liberal Party, that it might be good, since that message did go out, that I sit as an independent for the rest of the term that I'm here.
Okay. And what's your message to the people of Whitby?
The message to the people of Whitby is that, I love representing them, but I don't want to cause them any more grief, especially the ones who are very strong Liberal supporters. I don't want to cause them that grief, and so I think that it's probably the best thing for me to do is to sit as an independent.
And are you and the Prime Minister okay now, or do you still have issues? Or
no, I don't have any comment. I just want to speak to my constituents in Whitby. Thank you.
Now that Torontonians have had time to digest the federal budget, we asked a few of them what they think about the government's new spending plan. Megan Fitzpatrick spoke to commuters at Union Station earlier today.
I think they should be spending it probably on infrastructure, probably paying down the deficit and the debt would be the most important things for me.
The first thing I've realized is that they've done nothing to cut down the deficit. It's still at least close to about $20 billion. And there's nothing much, they said they've done a lot for the youngsters, like for the millennials. I don't see much in that. All they've done is just they can include about 35,000 in terms of RRSP. That's all they have done. They've done nothing for the immigrants too. So I'm really disappointed with the budget, not much.
Government should be spending less money. I think they should be reducing taxes. And it's just the typical thing where you're coming into an election year, let's spend money and try to bribe people to vote for us. That's the impression I get from this budget.
I feel like the last couple decades have taught me that austerity doesn't solve problems and smart spending does. So I think taking debt on to solve problems at this point in time is a smart move.
Mississauga's mayor says they're spending too much money on other cities, so they want to leave the region of Peel. Mayor Bonnie Crombie tweeted today that council passed in principle her motion to ask the province for a separation. Crombie says the city hands $85 million to the region to fund the growth of other cities. She adds that's not fair to local residents and businesses. Her next step is a community meeting to hear from residents on the topic.
There's all the jokes about we live in the dead center of town and people are dying to get in this neighborhood and so on.
A developer's bid to rename Cemetery Road in Uxbridge has hit a dead end. What residents have to say about their creepy address, coming up. Earlier, you had your pooch in the forecast there. Are you bringing her back? Like, first of all, what's the pooch's name, Carla? I didn't even tell the viewers.
Oh, that's Tia. That's
Tia.
my dog, Tia.
Yeah, so
that's
I know
right.
Tia. Now the viewers know her too. Will she be making regular guest appearances?
If I have my way, Dwight, she'll be with us at the end of the show one of these days.
All right.
All right? Yes, absolutely. You know what? The spring is here for the dogs. For all of us, we made it. It's a psychological thing, I know, because even the weather tends to kind of be a little up and down as it is a transitional season, but we know we've made it this far, and so that the warmer weather is coming. And speaking of warmer weather, boy, we certainly saw some of that today. Average high 5, and we were nearly at 10 degrees today, and that's unofficial. There probably was a spike there within the hour. We're still holding on at 8 degrees. It's been a nice day. The beginning of the evening, nice as well, but there is a system that's moving towards us. You can see temperatures already coming down there in southwestern Ontario because the spring showers have already moved in. It's not just spring showers, however. Look, as we get into some of the whites, there's cooler pockets here, and we are looking at some mixed precipitation, a little bit of flurry activity, especially to the north of the GTA, but we'll probably see as the temperatures fall tonight, a bit of that mix coming through the city and some patchy fog as well. Pretty extensive system, not a ton of moisture, but it's going to be pushing through and affecting us over not quite the next 24 hours. And there's another cold front to the north I'm going to take your attention to in just a moment. We'll deal with this one. So the showers through the overnight, some of that mix to the north coming back in. It'll get patchy at times, but even tomorrow morning we will have likely some areas with some wet roadways to deal with. That system rolls through. It keeps a lot of cloud cover, a bit of instability, so still a chance of seeing the odd sprinkle or flurry later in the day, but mostly I think it'll be clouds we'll contend with into the later afternoon. I'm hoping we'll see some sunny breaks developing. Then that next cold front approaching, so in between it we get a bit of a break, but that will be coming in and passing us Friday morning. That one will be more significant. Temperatures come down a little bit tomorrow. They come down much more into Friday. Not only that, the wind's getting blustery from the northwest coming across the lakes. We'll still be talking about some lake effect snow and some of those flurries making their way down into the GTA. So we are looking to the north and west of us of 3 to 5 centimeters and into the city seeing some light flurries, maybe even a dusting. So again, that's into Friday. For tonight, we're just looking at mostly showers, a bit of a mix, the low staying just above the freezing mark. Tomorrow afternoon, temperatures come down a bit from where they were today. Hope we'll see a little bit of that sunshine in there for our first full day of spring, 6 and 7 degrees for the highs around the region. Windy day, though, on Friday, cooler day on Friday. That's okay. We'll take it. We know it's the end of the week and that the weekend is really looking nice with building temperatures, Dwight, and sunshine ensured for us as well.
It is looking good. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
We started at the end of January. As soon as February hit, we started working on the field.
It's almost that time. Final touches are being made to Rogers Center Field as the Blue Jays prepare to start their season. More on how the field is pieced together for our boys of summer coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
There's a fight brewing in one of the quietest neighborhoods in Uxbridge. A developer is asking the town to rename a local street. They say buyers are getting spooked and don't want to live near Cemetery Road. As Nick Bover tells us, though, people who already live there aren't dying to change it.
The neighbors across the street are very quiet and neat.
Donald Bagshaw lives right across from a cemetery, and like most people in this neighborhood, he's heard it all.
There's all the jokes about we live in the dead center of town and but people are dying to get in this neighborhood and so on.
And you live on Cemetery Road, that's your address? What's it been like?
Fine. Some people look and say they don't know whether they could live there, but most of us are just fine with it.
These days, the street has come to life a few blocks away from the cemetery, where a new subdivision, including townhouses and low-rise condos, is under construction. But the developer says some people are getting scared off by the local street sign.
It's pushing their decision maybe to buy or not to buy if they're sitting on the fence. They're indicating to us they just don't like the name.
The developer's making this request even though the homes here aren't technically on Cemetery Road. Instead, they're going to have addresses that correspond to these brand new streets, like Harry Thornton Lane. Maplebrook Homes formally requested the name change this week.
It's never come up as an issue or it's never been a point of discussion with the residents that I've talked to.
Councillor Willie Pop says the inconveniences might be too large to ignore.
People already reside on Cemetery Road, and if you look at that from a perspective of all the documentation and information that you'd have to change for the residents, it would be fairly costly.
The town is working on a report about the pros and cons of a change. Local council will make a decision after it's ready. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Uxbridge.
And remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. First day of spring, and that means baseball can't be far off. And at the Rogers Centre, they've been busy for weeks to make sure everything is ready.
As soon as February hit, we started working on the field. That involved cleaning out all the dirt where it meets the turf to make sure the turf is clean when we started. Then we have to roll it out in sections.
Each roll of turf is 5 meters wide and up to 58 meters long and has to be secured with Velcro. As for food, the Rogers Centre is touting some new items this season, including a $5 value menu, which will include $5 beer at one kiosk per level. Long lineups there. Mark your calendars. Opening day is next Thursday, March 28th. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Some incredible images caught on camera by a skier waiting to head down the slopes in the Austrian Alps. The skier was with a group on a popular backcountry route when a ridge of snow collapsed beneath them. Look at that. Now the video looks pretty dramatic, but fortunately no one was hurt and a mountain rescue team got there to help them out. Everybody's all right, still enjoying the slopes. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A cafe in Port Credit is serving up fair trade coffee, baked goods, and a purpose. The social coffee bean is entirely staffed by people who live with mental illness. The community-based business is managed by Supportive Housing in Peel, and most days you'll find Robert behind the cafe's counter. He has worked there for more than a decade. This is his story.
Hi, my name's Robert. I work for the Social Coffee Bean in Port Credit, Mississauga. I live with schizophrenia. Is it together? Yes. It's together. Is that 2 mediums? Yeah. Like most people, when they hear that word, there's a lot of connotation that comes with that word. And people are afraid, usually people are afraid of what they don't understand. It's really difficult to be in a mainstream employment situation because you always have to weigh out whether or not you're going to disclose the information or not disclose the information to your employer. You know, that's something I struggle with, especially when I'm not well, if people are going to use it in a negative way. And it's pretty devastating for someone who's you know, trying to get work, has mental illness, keeps getting fired. A person living with mental illness can be just as useful as somebody who doesn't have mental illness. And they just need a little bit more support when it comes to setbacks. Here at the cafe, it's just a given that we all have at some point went through something, and we all support each other. We're a team here, you know, and this is why I've been here so long. It's my longest standing job. I started working here in 2006 when we opened. So how many sugars?
Just one brown sugar.
One brown sugar?
Yes.
Sometimes setbacks occur during the year. So this helps me kind of realign like my routines. And plus like the camaraderie here is great. Like we all back each other up. Just very recently, I had a minor setback and I needed to take some time off, and my colleagues took up the slack. If you need time off because you're dealing with something in particular, then you take the time you need, and then your shifts are available for you when you come back. For a long time, I was basically recovering from my illness, and I was hospitalized for a while, and it was a very trying time. I didn't feel like I had all that much purpose in life, and I didn't feel like there was much like length to the road of my life left. It just gives you such a great feeling to be a part of something.
Time to check out your GTA. Josie LaBelle caught this almost springtime sunset out in Oakville. Another great pic. Get your photos to us by posting them on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag CBC or GTA. We will air some of them on the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A Hamilton student is being hailed as a hero after his quick thinking saved a school bus from crashing.
I have to do something, so I thought, you know what, if there was any cars behind us, I didn't want a bus to suddenly stop. I decided to take the bus off the road for safety reasons.
Young Mr. Gilmore had never driven a car, let alone a bus, but when his school bus driver collapsed suddenly, he just sprang into action.
I looked over and I realized that the bus driver was having convulsions. He was having a seizure. So I got out of my seat and I knew I had to do something. So I took the wheel of the bus and I gently steered it over into a nearby swell. It's like a ditch. And the bus stopped in there. And then I proceeded to unbuckle the seatbelt from him so that others could help get him free.
Good job, young man. More heroes were on the bus that day and rushed to help, administering first aid to the driver and calling 911. And this next story is all for my friend Colette. Now, you've heard about tobogganing, but what about dog bogganing?
What?
Look at this. This was sent in from a viewer, Kate Ward in Collingwood, Ontario. Her favorite moment of winter, as we say bye-bye winter. These are her dogs, Duke and Bowie. I'm guessing Bowie's the one sliding. They're having the time of their lives on the slopes. That is so...
No toboggan needed.
Look at that.
I love it. You know, I almost feel guilty because I'm so happy spring's here.
Yeah.
But my dog, too, loves to
do
roll in the
that
snow,
stuff,
loves
yeah.
the snow, makes snow angels, loves it.
It's a great way to say bye to winter, though. We do like it. So, but spring has sprung. It's here officially today.
Yeah, we're in it.
I got a spring in my step. It feels good.
Yeah, it does feel pretty good, doesn't it? And it felt pretty good because the temperature is so mild today. We had a lot of sunshine through much of the day, too. Oh, that's kind of changing, though, now as the system is moving in tonight. So we do have what will mostly be showers for us closer to the lakeshore south of the 401, but getting into a mix further towards the north, some wet flurries. And on the backside, because that temperature falling pretty close to freezing overnight tonight, although staying above 2 degrees, it does mean through the overnight we may see a mix into the city and through the GTA as well. A little bit of that precipitation sticking around for tomorrow morning's commute, and then a lot of the cloud cover kind of hanging in there. And look out for a bit of patchy fog. So tomorrow, a little bit cooler than it was today, but still 6 degrees, chillier Friday, and then the temperature's going up for the weekend.
We like it. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for watching. Mike Wise has your next local newscast at 11. Colin and I will see you back here tomorrow. Happy spring, everybody.